Hello everyone, Afterglow version 2.3 is now available, so we're going to have a look at some clips showing off some of the features and some of the development notes. There's a range of things and not everything is covered in this. Big headline features are there are new spatial environments which are designed more for sky-based bounce lighting. There's been like scale adjustments, so now every type of studio cage and character cage, even though character cages have now been merged into studio cages, and studio environments are now the same scale, not the same size, but they now have parity between the scale. So the template character, which is based on a 5'8" model of a humanoid being, will now be consistent between every environment, from the cages to the actual studio environments to the new spatial environments. There are new cages, there are mat caps, there are organizational changes, there are improvements to the node groups now. It's a lot easier to understand like the light mapping for studio environments. And importantly, before I forget, I'm doing a 25% discount to celebrate this release for 1 week only. So use the code AFTER23, so there's obviously after 23 for version 2.3 on Gumroad. It's on Gumroad only, and enjoy the video. The character cages, which were previously designed for more colorful and stylistic character renders, had now been merged into the studio cage category. Additionally, the scaling of the lighting cage has now been made more appropriate and is in line with the studio environment scaling as well. So basically the character scale is consistent. It's based around a 5'8" individual, but this means that you can easily swap in and out of both studio environments and now studio cages without having to worry about rescaling objects or characters or products or whatever you want to display. You may also be able to tell that a couple of new cages have been added and more will hopefully be added over time as well. There have been some improvements to the light mapping for the studio environments. So these are large light objects which could either be on the ceiling or the floor or the wall, depending on which exact environment it is. You see that I can change them here. In the past, the nodes have been a little bit complicated, a bit messy to understand. I figured that it was time for a bit of improvement. So as you can see here, they've been organized into node groups which provide a vector output, and this basically decides the mapping. So if I plug in the 1x2 ceiling image mapping with the gradient lines mid pattern, we can see that apply. And naturally, because it's a 1x2 ceiling, if I find the right category down here, I'll be able to choose a compatible pattern. So let me pick 1x2 doodles, drag that in, plug in the vector, and then plug in the color to the emission color, and we'll see that apply. And then there's also the input controls as well, so we can flip the direction or change the angle or change the offset, which will change the position. So it's just a nicer interface for controlling light panes now. You may also notice the categories have changed slightly as well. So under studio environments and studio environment light patterns, there's a little bit of parity between the names. So we can see that 1x2 light environments are separated from the environments with other aspect ratios. But if you click on the parent category, then you'll be able to see all of them. I noticed something quite interesting. So under the light shapes category and under geometries, there's an object called light shape triangle trio. Now, if I enable this, it doesn't really look like much to start with. It's kind of flat lighting. You'll see that the geometry is 3 triangles, but one thicker and larger one in the center. But one fun thing I found with this is if you move it behind an object like a character, it sort of becomes this immediate, like hyper cinematic and cool highlighting tool with a little bit of the outline appearing in a volume, which you can control with visibility settings. But like every position we put it in changes and enhances this highlight. You could also do a little bit of angular adjustment as well, but I just thought, oh my god, that's actually really cool. You can also make it slightly asymmetrical if I rotate it on the Y, so we get a slight, shadow difference over the shoulders. I in particular might want to use it for like some kind of ominous creature renders of some kind. But this is one of the fun things I find about using tools like this is, just with a little bit of experimentation, you can make really cool discoveries for new lighting styles. And really, the same can be applied to like a lot of the other objects here. One of the things I've been experimenting with in 2.3 is the idea of spatial environments, which is actually something I wanted to do when the Afterglow project originally started. Because that we've got the studio environments, which have, the map to light objects on the ceilings or the floors or the walls. But spatial environments are quite different. It's literally just kind of relying on the bounce lighting from a source, like in this case, the sky texture, which can completely change the profile and the color of the scene depending on what's available. So what we're looking at specifically here is an offshoot file, not actually the Afterglow file, but it's just a quick little art experiment with a CC0 Buddha model taken from Sketchfab. So I've put this experiment file on my Patreon for the $5 tier members and above. We have a members lounge on my website where I'll occasionally throw up experiments and different files, production files for projects, etc. So consider this a sample for the patrons. I'm going to keep working on it. There's different variations I was working on as well. For example, one with a view, one with emissive lights. I mean, just look how clean that is. It's such a nice vibe. And some of you will get the reference to this. This is actually a reference to a particular particular film scene, or I think it appears in a couple. Let me know if you get it. So this should be in the experimental version of Afterglow 2.3 if you're watching this. I'm trying to make sure that everything I show is somewhat available somewhere. So yeah, I'll keep going with that. I just want to show you something really cool quickly about the parity of scale and position. So I've got this replaceable character, right? And there's other replaceable objects. You know, a sphere is always good at kind of looking at the reflections around objects. But by keeping everything the same scale and position, we can do something really cool. Let me disable that environment quickly and unplug the sky texture. So we've got a studio cage and the character is standing right in the middle of it. Some objects are hidden because we can enable and disable the camera ray visibility. So we can just put our character there or any other object and preview the lighting and be like, yes, we like this one or that one or this one. Oh yes, a bit more stylistic, good. Or I want something a bit more comprehensive. Let me enable the studio, smack bang in the middle, right scale. Just quickly swap in and out and see what different effects you can get. And now the same thing with the spatial environments. So this one requires a sky texture. So I plug that in, smack bang in the middle of it again, and again with the other one with a view. So when working inside of the Afterglow file, it's just, you've got access to so much variety just by enabling and disabling the different options. So that's why I want to keep it, consistent scale, position, etc., because it's so easy to rapidly prototype lighting styles just by swapping them in and out. Now, obviously, it's a little bit more difficult when you're dragging these in as collection assets to new files, which is what you're really supposed to do, because Afterglow is intended to be used as a asset library. But there's different workflows you can choose when doing that. You can tick to append and instance collections when linking and appending, drag it in, press Control A, make instances real. You can organize the collections, but I do have an add-on for helping with that called modular workspaces, which is not essential, but it does help when dragging things in to like auto center things, organize them into collections, etc. Basically, the bottom line is I'm really happy with the simplicity and the ease of prototyping in this. The new spatial environments rely mostly on exterior world lighting from the world nodes, so I'm using a sky texture, the one that comes with Blender, and the multiple scattering option, and I've also reduced the sun intensity. The glass objects still allow shadows to come through, and one of the things I just wanted to show you was how this works. So any of these spatial environments that have an outside view, you could replace with any kind of terrain or environment that you wanted, right? So that's up to you. I'm just here to prepare the interior spaces. So without an exterior lighting source, there's nothing really happening, but I wanted to show you how nice it looks when we do proceed through the time of day. So we've got our dawn colors where it starts coming in, a little bit of red and peeking over the horizon. Then our object will be clear to see. As the elevation rises, it gets very bright, but I'm using the ADX color space, so even though it's bright, it's still, sensible. And you can see the outline of the room. It's a white room, so there's a lot of bounce lighting going on. When it starts to get to the center, we get the shadow coming through the ceiling port. And here is where we kind of get like peak daytime brightness. What I like about this is it's a really good simulation of daylight with the multiple scattering, so it's not completely white. But this is pretty much the perfect environment if you want like an analog for daylight, while kind of keeping it within a controlled environment. So if we proceed with the elevation, we can get the shadow creeping back over the object. And as that proceeds, we will end up into the afternoon, evening, and then dusk time. So we'll lose the light again, the color will dim down. We'll get that twilight dusk color before night arrives. But even then, you can think of creative ways to use lighting here. And there is absolutely nothing preventing you from combining this kind of spatial environment with some of the other tools available in Afterglow, like for example, some of the light geometries. So let's pick one like the light shape faded ring, which is a ring that has a kind of faded gradient in it. Let me apply it near the character. In the viewport, we can see that. So I'm just going to rotate it around them. Now we can control the ray visibility on the object so we can see whether it appears in, glossy information such as the reflection or not, or whether it just appears as diffuse. But with a little bit of fiddling around, we can maybe get something interesting, maybe a bit of a highlight there, play with the intensity. We can also gradiate color however we like. I wanted to add a little bit of blue. But the point is you start to see the logic in combining different paradigms. We have emissive mesh lighting, we have bounce lighting from the world in spatial environments, as well as all the other types of environments that Afterglow provides. And if you yourself enhanced environments such as this with like your own exterior scenes or additional elements that would be present in the views, then I can only imagine what kind of stuff you'll come up with. I personally can't wait to demonstrate more characters and sculpt objects and props in these environments. In fact, while we're here, what happens if I grab my Marathon main, Recon? Nice, let's get that light on. So now we've got Recon in pure daylight, and this took absolutely no effort to set up whatsoever. Note that I've still got the ring going as well, so if I get rid of that, we're back to just the natural daylight. I think that is very cool. So Afterglow 2.3 is currently available on Gumroad and Superhive. What are you waiting for? Go get it. Remember, code AFTER23 if you're early enough for 25% off for the first week. But also, if you want to get involved and help with the development of free projects for the community, of which a free sample of Afterglow was one of the ones on the roadmap, then again, you can sign up to the Patreon under the $5 tier because you will help to raise the wage for working on community projects. So thank you and have a great day.